All right, I know you all have asked for it, so here it is. Finally got my toolbox tour going. Only took me a year, but we're back with it. Hang around. All right, I'm back. Got toolbox tour finally for you. So let's get started. First off, my toolbox. It's the Montezuma. I don't know exactly what type of box you'd call it. I call it a road chest. It's been great for me. A lot of people ask about it. I get a lot of compliments out on my job sites with it. So let's show you what we got. First off, I always keep my easy red light here on the outside. Is a magnetic base. Twists around. Nice and bright. Always keep it there, that way it's right handy for wherever I need it. So I'll kind of start at the top, work my way down. Starting at the top, my wrenches, which are metric and standard, are all the gear wrench, long patterns. This is the 44-piece set. Put the part number right up here. I'm able to carry from 6mm on metric up to 25mm, and from 1/4 inch in standard up to 1 1/4 inches. I'd like to go longer, but unfortunately the depth of my box doesn't allow that to happen. Going down next, we've got my 3/8 shallow sockets on the top row here, standards. They run from 1/4 inch up to 1 inch. Metrics from 6mm up to 19. Got a couple overflows on my deep wells, the 7 and 8mm. Don't use them very much, but it's handy to have them. Next up, I've got a bit holder for my 1/4 inch quick disconnect bits. Keep a lot of things like the nut setters, the little 3/8 and 1/4 inch socket adapters, various Phillips tips, a bit holder, so if I'm using something like a Torx bit or in this case, number 3 Phillips, I can pop those in. A couple other random little bits in there. This little holder is by Olsa. It is a magnetic base, so it does stay in place. This top section kind of holds random stuff. I've got a ratcheting snap-on screwdriver, a couple small little screwdrivers. Got the snap-on seam ripper tool, which is great if you're need to get into a harness for cutting the tape on it. Don't have to worry about slicing through a wire. This is a little right angle. It's got a 1/4 inch hex and a 1/4 inch square on it, so you can use a 1/4 inch socket or you can use a 1/4 inch hex bit. A couple 1/4 inch palm ratchets. Number 3 3/8 Phillips bit for when you need a little extra torque, try to get something off. This is just a non-ratcheting 1/4 inch hex spinner. Razor blades. And even though I don't really have any lights that aren't rechargeable now, I do have a couple packs of AA and AAA batteries up here. On this side here, I've got a pair of automatic wire strippers and 2 pairs of ratcheting crimpers. One set for insulated connectors, one set for uninsulated. In the center, have a little belt clip. Even though some of my drills and stuff do have belt clips built into them, I do have this as a backup. Sometimes they don't hold the greatest. This one tends to hold a little bit better. My regular flip blade utility knife. And just another little pocket knife. This side here I've got cutters, some crimpers, strippers, and some channel style pliers, a couple vice grips, big loppers for big cables, snap-on crimpers, Snap-on strippers. Everybody's favorite. PWC S7 ACF. The stripper crimper combos. Some side cutters. Needle nose. Standard slip joint pliers. A pair of the Van Pliers linesman pliers. Small Nipex channel locks. Mid-size Nipex channel locks. And then the bigger Nipex channel locks, which unfortunately they're too long to sit inside this chamber, so they sit down here below. And a couple pairs of flush cuts. This container, I also have one of the little snap-on pocket lights. This one's got the LED on it. Also has the UV light on it. Not rechargeable, does take, I believe, AAA batteries. Good little light, is magnetic in 2 different positions. These are really a great light for 25 bucks. Moving on to the other side, we've got the snap-on 8-piece screwdriver set. Has 3 Phillips and 5 standard flathead screwdrivers. Snap-on pick set. Next to that, set that out for a second, it's my ratchets. So I've got gear wrench ratchets that came along with my gear wrench socket sets. Standard length 1/4 inch, long handle 1/4 inch, stubby 3/8, standard 3/8 in a 84 tooth, standard 3/8 in a 120 tooth, long 3/8 in an 84 tooth, and my one oddball, which is a Husky 1/2 inch ratchet. I don't use 1/2 inch that much, mostly use those on my big impact, so it doesn't get used much, but got there just in case I do need it. Couple extensions, a few for 1/4 inch, couple here for 3/8 and varying lengths from about 12 inch down to 1 inch. Also have just a, this is actually just a 1 inch, 1/2 inch impact rated, and then I have a 3/8 to 1/2 inch adapter. So if I need something that doesn't need a lot of torque, I can throw that on there, use it with like my 3/8 impact. Couple of the spanner wrenches for my grinders. 1/4 inch deep wells. On standard, they go from a 1/4 inch, no, I'm sorry, 3/16 of an inch up to 9/16. On metric, from 5 millimeter up through 14. I'll get to those in a bit, but in the back I do have a couple other sizes that didn't quite fit in here, so they stay kind of in the back of the box. Also along the top row, small snap-on ratcheting screwdriver and a couple 1/4 inch hex bit extensions. Going down to the bottom, my Fluke Multimeter. On this side, we've got the 3/8 deep wells on standard from 1/4 inch up to 7/8, and metric from 9 millimeter up to 19. Then of course I also have the other 2 up top here, the 8 and 7 millimeters. As I showed you before, my large set of Nipex small pair of scissors. These work great for heat shrink. I have a locking 1/4 inch extension. Don't use this too often, but there are some places you get into a tight area. Having the locking collar on it does help to keep you from pulling the socket off, possibly losing it down in an engine compartment or something. A long locking 1/4-inch hex extension. These are great, especially if you're using like a unibit, drilling through something. If you're going into a wall or something, so when you pull it back, it doesn't pop off and you lose it down in the wall cavity. Even Harbor Freight unibits aren't that cheap, so it's nice to be able to save them when you can. SDS hammer drill bit for when I have to put in tap cons. Radial stripper for larger cables. I have one application that requires a 3/16 hex key, so I've got one of the snap-on T handles. This works great because it's in a kind of a tight area. Maybe I'll hold on to that. I can torque or tighten down the nut from the underside and still get this in there and hold on to it. I have some 1/2-inch impact sockets. They're gear wrench as well. Do have a 1-inch snap-on deep well 1/2-inch drive. I use this with my knockout punch set. Most of the time it just lives on my 1/2-inch Milwaukee impact, but I have been storing it in the toolbox more just to keep it from rusting. Okay. Underneath here is a little compartment. I kind of keep some random stuff down here. I've got some ground lug crimpers, a set of PVC cutters, network RJ45 crimpers, some panel tools, over here, wire insertion tool, a couple small screwdrivers, some extra picks left over from an old set, Sawzall blades, just some random little stuff that doesn't really have a place anywhere else. We've got the new snap-on neck light, magnetic pickup tool and inspection mirror, flat blade scraper. I carry a label maker around. A lot of times I need to label whether it's wires that are plugged into the wall or network cables. I always keep this with me. It's handy, works great. Labels aren't that expensive. This one's actually rechargeable as well. So in there as well, it's a little power cube for that, for charging it. Snap-on 3/8, and there's actually 3 that are 1/4-inch. These are the hardened Torx bits. They work great with whether it's my hex impact with the 1/4-inch adapter or on my 3/8 Milwaukee impact as well. Kind of in the center, I've got solder, got various rolls of electrical tape, including some colored tape, mastic tape for sealing up antenna connections, ball peen hammer. Over on this side, got some other socket bits. So some long ball end hex drives in standard. These are just a cobalt, nothing fancy. I don't use them that often, but occasionally I do need them, so ended up having to pick up a set. 1/4-inch metric universals. Quarter-inch shallow dry sockets, as well as the 4mm and 15mm deeps out of the set that unfortunately wouldn't fit on the pegs. 3/8 metric universals. Standard 1/4-inch shallows, 1/4-inch standard universals, and 3/8 standard universals. Good Milwaukee tape measure. If you haven't tried these out yet, these things do extend out very far before they fold over on themselves, unlike some that you might only get out a few, a foot or two, and then they'll start to fold over. I think I've tested this one out to close to 10 feet. Little case I keep random drill bits in. Also have a little unibit, a couple of the carbide tipped hole saws, a little micro saw, I think they call them. They're impact ready, so you can run them in your like 1/4" hex impact with no problems. Snap-on nylon trim tool set. Snap-on roll pin punches. I have a Torx 300. I use this most of the time, mainly for heat shrink tubing and heat shrink connectors. When I need something a little bit more, I also have the Torx 400. The 400 really is too big for most applications I use it for. Occasionally I do have to heat up a bolt or something, and this will work great for that. I don't recommend this though if you're doing heat shrink. Even though it's low setting, it's pretty high heat, and it will melt and burn stuff before it'll actually shrink it. Then we've got a couple little levels, magnets on them. Those just stick along the side. So that's the toolbox. We'll move on over to some of the other spots. On the passenger side of my box, I carry a knee pad. I know there's a lot of companies out there that are offering them, Snap-on, Matco. If you actually go to the gardening section of just about any hardware store, you can pick them up pretty cheap. I think this one was about maybe 12 bucks, I think from Lowe's. Very thick, kind of a closed cell foam. Carry a couple stakes along. I'll show you what those are used for as we get to the back. Have a pry bar. This one has actually got the adjustable foot on it. Also has a striking cap on the end and a striking place here at the heel. That's a crescent. This thing's been great. Gives you lots of leverage. I actually use this on roofs of trucks a lot for removing old antennas. So it's nice to be able to adjust that to a different angle while I'm up on a ladder to get the leverage I need to pry up from the old sealant that's down. Dead blow. This one's just a Harbor Freight one. Don't use it very often, but it does come in handy sometimes. Little 3-pound S-wing sledge. Long SDS Plus hammer drill bit. I believe that one's 1/2 inch. All right, on the passenger side, or I'm sorry, on the driver's side of my parts box, carry my tub of towels, apparently with notes on them. Got my Snap-on multimeter. Have some heat shrink tubing. On top of my parts box, currently I've got the large grip mat laying down. Up there I'll carry my paper towels, some rubber gloves. I've got some random drill bits up here, stuff that I use pretty common. So it's nice to be able to lay them up here, keep them around. Small little micro screwdriver. One of my Snap-on soldering irons. Small little tape measure. Some extra screws that unfortunately don't have enough room right now in my box for. Various cable ties, zip ties, coax seal. Another soldering iron, and again, some other drill bits, hole saws, Forstner bit. Along the back, have a small spool of 18 gauge wire, just in case I ever need it. This is where I carry all my small parts in. Of course, it's 4 drawers. This is by Durham Manufacturing. You can get these lots of different places, Granger, probably even find them on Amazon, Home Depot, places like that. Bottom drawer, which is the heaviest, is nuts and bolts. Mostly what I use is 1/4-inch hardware, have some 5/16, have some smaller stuff, some 8/32, 10/32. I've got some M5s that I use for particular application. The various nuts, washers, you know, they go along with the various bolts I carry. Next up's my screw bin. For that, I've got Tapcons, I've got drywall screws, wood screws, drywall anchors, the little zippets. Got stinger point. We've got the self-drilling point, self-tapping as some people like to call them. The Tech roofing screws. I use these a lot because I do a lot of stuff on the outside of vehicles and on the outside of buildings. They have the little washer with the rubber O-ring around it that will seal up after it's been pushed down. They're also coated so they don't rust as easy. Carry those in a couple lengths. Also have some stinger points on those for some times where you might be going into wood and you don't need to have the self-drilling tip on them. Next up's crimp connectors. I'm not a big fan of crimp connectors, but there's sometimes you just cannot get away with not using them. Examples would be like ring terminals. You could make a ring, you know, twisting the wire around, soldering it up, and it would make an okay ring, but ideally you're probably going to want to use a terminal of some sort. I use the heat shrink ones, not the ones with the solder in it. I've never found that the ones with the solder in it, the solder always melts all the way through and properly coats the wire, so it doesn't really give you that much better of a connector. Yellow, which is the 12 to 10 gauge roughly. Blue, which is usually like 14 to 16. And pink, which is 16 to 20 gauge. Do have butt connectors. Don't use those very often, but again, sometimes you can't get away with not using them, so I do carry them along. Do have some of the quick disconnects in male and the female. Do a lot with relays, so the insulated ones are very important on the females. Some 15 amp fuses, because most of the stuff that I do does involve 15 amp fuses. Finally, in my parts drawer is my RF connectors. I do a lot of custom antenna cables for one of my customers, so I carry all the most commonly used RF connectors. That way I don't have to replace an entire cable, I just replace a connector. In the bed of the truck, going from the back, or from the cab side to the back, on the far side over there you can see I've got a spool of LMR 400 coax cable, 100-foot extension cord, and in this corner here is the racketeers. Those actually split apart. I can stick a conduit between them, put my spool on it. That's what the stakes were for that I showed you earlier. This side here is all my power tools. I run all the Milwaukee fuel, mostly the 18 volt. I do have a couple items that are 12 volt. I've got a little vacuum that's currently not in here, and I've got one of the M12 3/8 ratchets. In the center, you can see my portaband. I've got a blower. Macy Mod, mobile electronics technician. Why do you have a blower? I go on blow out the cars. You get into a really dirty vehicle or something, sounds bad, open one door, open the other door, blow the crap out. I'm not talking like trash, I'm just talking like the dirt, dust, things like that. Gets it off the floor, make it for a little bit cleaner work environment. 1/2-inch hammer drill, 1/4-inch hex driver, 3/8 impact. This is just the, I hate to call it low torque because it's definitely not low torque. I think it's rated up to 250 foot-pounds. Those would be the 3 most common that I use. This is the 1 1/8 SDS Plus hammer drill. The M18 Lantern. Nice thing about this is that you can do the lights all on one side, or you can turn the ring here and it'll give you 360 degree of lighting. Also has a USB port on the back. This is really nice for charging your phones or whatever. Just press the little button when your battery's on there, plug your cable in, plug your phone in, and it'll charge it up. 1/2-inch fuel impact. This isn't the new high torque one. This one's only the 1100 foot-pound. Works great for my application. M18 Light. The M12 3/8 fuel ratchet. The M18 cutout tool, roto zip basically, Dremel tool, whatever you want to call it. Occasionally I do have to cut into drywall. This makes quick work of it. The heat gun, I'll do kind of a review on this one coming up. It works okay for some applications, others it just does not seem to have the power that it should, but it does work. 18-volt angle drill when you dig in those tight areas. Fuel grinder, again 18-volt, has a little side handle on it. You saw in my toolbox I keep the spanner wrenches inside my box so I always know where they're at. Carry a couple of different discs, a couple different grits of flap disc, and a couple just regular cut-off wheels. And finally, I've got my fuel Sawzall. Now, you may say, well, looks like they're just kind of thrown in there. They are not just thrown in there. I do always place stuff in there carefully. This is just a lot easier than trying to deal with, you know, a lot of hard cases or a tool bag that's going to get beat around. All these are up off the floor. In fact, actually underneath of them, you see the kind of like blue along the edge and the green strap. Those are all little plastic containers that I keep other parts in. Mainly the little insulated cable clamps. For my M18 tools, I do carry generally 7 of the 5, well, I've got 4 5 amp hour batteries. I've got 2 of the 4 amp hour batteries and 1 of the XC batteries. The 4 amp hours I've had since 2013, and they're still going strong. For charging, I've got the multi-bay charger. This one will charge up to 3 batteries at the same time. We'll also charge the M12 batteries. Now, it will only charge one side at a time. So whichever battery's in there first, that's the one that's going to charge. So if I put an M18 on, then an M12, it's going to charge the 18 before the 12. Once the 18's complete, then it'll move over and charge the 12. The basket on this side carries a lot of kind of tool overflow. Also carries things like PB blaster, extra tubes of silicone. Right here I've got my caulk gun. I've got some degreaser. Can of butane for my soldering iron and my torches. Denatured rubbing alcohol. This works great if you do have to I stick a lot of antennas, things like that, onto windows, whatnot. It beats trying to use the little alcohol pads. I just buy a can of this. Lasts me probably 6 to 8 months. And I use it a lot. Just put it on a paper towel, wipe it down, and it's ready to go. My riv nut tool. This is great if you've ever used the rivet gun style, whether it's the squeeze ones or the two-handled. This one gives you a lot more control over it. Also saves you from having to twist and adjust the die on it in more each time. This one goes from metric M3 to M6 and SAE 8/32 up to 1/4 20. Dustpan and little sweep broom. Full set of Irwin drill bits. In the back, I've got the gear wrench. I guess you could call it the master set of Torx Hex Keys, and you can see they don't. I'm not a big fan of these style cases, but this is really a lot easier with my toolbox than trying to put them on rails. These cover 3/8, ½ inch, and 1/4 inch drive. For the money, it's a great set. I think they're under or around $150. Did have a piece of foam inside there to keep the stuff from bouncing around too much. I think the foam blew away on me one time, so I just put a shop towel in there, and that helps keep things in place. Got my Power Probe 4. If you've seen my Power Probe video, you know I complained. The latch on here broke. I really wish they'd come out with a soft case for this. If I ever find some type of soft case or anybody knows of one, please let me know down in the comments. I would love to get some type of different case for this. And finally, my knockout punch set. If you remember me mentioning, I've got the 1-inch snap-on deep well, ½ inch drive that I use on my impact. This is what that's for. If you're not familiar with the knockout punch, simply drill a 7/8 hole. Put the little die on one side. This would be going into metal. You wouldn't want to do this on wood. You could do this on certain plastics. Screw the other side on, and you basically just get right up against there. Then you can either use the supplied ratcheting wrench, or in my case, I just use my impact driver. Tying it down, punches out a perfect hole. This set will go up to 2-inch conduit size, which, if you're in an electrical trade, you know their conduit size is based on the air diameter. So a 2-inch is actually probably about a 2 1/4, 2 1/8, somewhere in there size hole. I usually don't go quite that large on them. Most of the time I'm using either this one here, which this one I believe is designed for 1-inch conduit, or this one here, which I believe is for 1 1/4 inch. In the bed of my truck, I always carry a couple ladders. Have the small step stool. That's mainly meant, I'm short. That's kind of tall, so to reach in there, get stuff out of the bed. But it's also nice to have. Don't need to step up too high. You know, that gets you another foot or so off the ground. Got what I call the Little Giant style ladder. This one's a Werner. Goes up to 13 feet, extended out like an extension ladder, or about 6 feet in an A-frame type ladder. Then I've got the step stool. This comes up about 3 feet off the ground. They say you can reach a 9-foot ceiling with it. Maybe if you're a little taller than me, but All these fold up great, fit nicely in the back of the bed. I do have a couple different sizes of the little giant that I carry with me depending on the application of job that I'm going to. The 13 is my most common. Next would be the 17, and if I really need it, I've got one that goes up to, I believe, 22 feet. That one's a little bit more difficult to haul around though. Thanks for watching my toolbox tour. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have questions on anything in my toolbox, which as you can see is actually the bed of my truck, please let me know in the comments. Try to read every comment that you guys put in there. And as always, hit that thumbs up if you like this. Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe down below. Thanks for watching.